The morning sun poured through the dusty windows of room 3B, casting long, yellow stripes over chipped desks, and faded posters of multiplication tables. It should have been a normal school day. Nothing special, nothing scary. But for 12-year-old Eli Santos, today felt like walking into a storm without an umbrella. He clutched the tiny Philippine flag he'd brought from home. Its fabric was worn, soft from years of being handled, corners slightly torn. His papa had once waved it proudly, during barangay parades, with Eli riding on his shoulders. Today, Eli hoped that same flag would give him courage. Miss Harding stood at the front, heels tapping impatiently on the cracked linoleum floor. She was tall, sharp-featured, with glasses always sliding to the end of her nose. Her voice was the kind that could silence a room with a single sigh. Cold, clipped, the kind that didn't leave much room for dreams. "All right, class," she said, flipping through her attendance clipboard. "For International Day, we'll have one student from each background sing or recite something meaningful." Eli volunteered to perform the Philippine National Anthem. Volunteered, someone snickered behind him. Eli didn't turn around. He knew they were laughing. They always did. He stood up slowly, every muscle trembling like he'd swallowed a whole thunderstorm. He walked to the front, the tiny flag pressed against his chest like armor. He tried to ignore the way the room grew strangely quiet, not respectful quiet. The kind where everyone waits to see a car crash. Miss Harding stepped aside, her expression flat. "Go ahead, Eli." He inhaled once, twice, and began. "Bayang Magiliw," but his voice cracked. A few giggles. One loud snort. Eli tried again. "Perlas ng silanganan." Another crack. This time worse. He felt his throat closing up, tears pushing behind his eyes. He willed them not to fall. He could hear his papa's voice in his memories, gentle as moonlight. "You sing from the heart, anak. Doesn't matter if you're scared." But right now, fear was winning. A chair scraped. Someone whispered, "Stop, bro, you sound like a broken speaker." Another kid said, "My ears. Make it stop." Eli's chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. But he kept singing. He had to. He promised himself he would. Then it happened. Miss Harding dropped her chalk, letting it clatter against the board. She pinched the bridge of her nose dramatically and said, loud enough for the back row to hear, "Eli, stop. Please." The room froze. Eli did too, his lips still parted mid-word. "Ma'am, I can try again. I practiced." "No," she said, slicing the air with her hand like she was cutting him out of existence. "I'm sorry, but this is painful. I can't let you continue." A few students gasped, others laughed outright. Eli felt like he'd been slapped. "Ma'am, I just need one more." "No, you don't." Her tone sharpened. "How many times do I have to tell you? Singing is not for you. Some children have talent, and some," she paused deliberately, eyes narrowing on him, "simply don't." The laughter now came in waves. Not cruel on purpose, they were kids, copying the adult who led them. But it hurt all the same. Eli's ears rang. He couldn't tell if it was from humiliation or the urge to cry. Miss Harding pointed toward his chair. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself further." Embarrass yourself? Further, those two words stabbed deeper than anything else. Eli lowered the flag. The little fabric, once a symbol of pride, now felt like a mistake, like he disrespected his whole country by opening his mouth. His legs wobbled as he walked back down the aisle, passing rows of wide-eyed students who didn't know whether to laugh or look away. He slid into his chair, set the flag gently on his desk, and stared at his hands. They were shaking so violently he had to tuck them under his thighs. Miss Harding was already moving on, calling the next student, acting like nothing had happened. But for Eli, everything had changed. He felt something inside him crack, the fragile belief that maybe he had something special, something worth sharing. Today, that belief shattered. Yet, under all the humiliation, under all the doubt, there was still something small, smaller than a whisper, softer than a tremble, still breathing inside him. One more try, just one more. He didn't know why that thought stayed alive. But one day, he'd learn it survived for a reason. A very important reason. The walk home felt longer than usual. Eli kept his head down as he crossed the cracked sidewalks of their Manila neighborhood, gripping his backpack straps tightly, so no one would see his hands trembling. Jeepneys rumbled past in splashes of color, reds, greens, blues, each painted with names like Maria Gracia or God Bless. Their bright decorations made the world look cheerful, but Eli felt like he was walking through gray rain even under the sun. He replayed the moment over and over, the cracked notes, the laughter, the words that hurt worse than stones. You will never be a singer. By the time he reached their tiny wooden house on the corner, his heart felt heavy enough to drag behind him. The front door was open just a little, letting out the smell of sautéed garlic and onion. Mama's way of stretching cheap ingredients into something that tasted like home. She looked up as he stepped inside. Mama was small, with tired eyes and warm hands that could fix almost anything except the kind of wounds no one could see. She sat on a low stool mending pants someone from the neighborhood had paid her a few coins to repair. You're home early, Anak, she said gently. Something wrong? Eli forced the corners of his mouth up. I'm fine, Mama. But Mama had the kind of eyes that could see through lies, like sunlight through curtains. She set the pants aside and wiped her hands on her apron. Come here. Eli hesitated, then walked into her embrace. The moment her arms wrapped around him, the tears he'd been holding back all afternoon pushed against his throat. But he swallowed them. He didn't want Mama to worry. She worked too hard already. You hungry? She asked. He nodded even though he wasn't. She spooned a small portion of garlic rice into a bowl barely enough for a growing boy, but they made do. Eli sat by the small window while he ate, watching the world outside. Kids played tumbang preso in the street. A sari-sari store radio blasted old Filipino love songs. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster crowed even though it wasn't morning. Life kept moving, like nothing had happened, but inside him, something had stopped. Mama sat beside him. Do you want to tell me? He stared at his bowl. Not really. That bad. Huh? She said softly. Eli's eyes burned. Mama, what if I'm no good at anything? She frowned. Why would you say that? He gripped the spoon tighter. Miss Harding said I'll never be a singer. Mama's breath caught. Not because she doubted him, but because she knew how much he loved to sing. Ever since he was little, music was the one thing that lit him up. After Papa died, it was the only thing that brought out his smile. What happened, Anak? He told her everything, the laughter, the cracks in his voice, the humiliation. Mama didn't interrupt. She didn't rush him, she just listened. When he finished, she took a long, slow breath. Eli, people say hurtful things when they can't see someone's heart. But maybe she's right, he whispered. Maybe I was just pretending I could do something special. Mama reached out and brushed a thumb across his cheek. Your papa used to say the same thing when people doubted him. But he never stopped singing. Papa wasn't rejected in front of a whole class, Eli muttered. Mama didn't argue, she didn't try to fix it with empty words. Instead, she looked out the same window he'd been staring through and said, Sometimes pain is just a seed, Anak. It feels small, ugly, useless, until one day it grows into something strong. Eli didn't answer. His heart still felt shattered. That night after dinner he sat alone by the window. Neighborhood lights flickered. The moon peeked between clouds. He held the tiny Philippine flag in his lap, smoothing the worn edges with his thumb. It had always made him proud. Now it just reminded him of failure. He whispered, barely audible, Papa, I wish you were here. The air felt heavy, but somewhere inside that heaviness, there was still a spark, a small ember refusing to die. He couldn't explain it. He didn't even notice it. But it was there, flickering in the ashes of his confidence. He closed his eyes tightly and whispered, half prayer, half plea, I just want someone to believe in me, even if it's only one person. The night swallowed his words. He thought no one heard. School felt different the next morning, quieter, heavier, like the walls themselves. Remembered what had happened to Eli, and didn't quite know what to say about it. He walked through the gate with his shoulders low, and his flag tucked deep inside his backpack, too ashamed to even touch it. He arrived early on purpose. He didn't want to see his classmates' smirks or hear their whispered jokes. If he slipped into the classroom before anyone else got there, maybe he could disappear for a while. The hallway was empty except for the soft scrape of a broom. Shirt, Mang Rahman, the school janitor, was sweeping near the lockers. He was hunched slightly from age, but moved with a slow steadiness, as if he were sweeping memories instead of dirt. The morning light landed gently on his silver hair, giving him a faint halo that Eli might have noticed if he weren't staring at the floor. As Eli walked past, he heard the old men humming something, a melody gentle as a sunrise. Eli froze. It was Lupang Hinirang. Not just humming, Rahman hummed it with heart, with reverence, with emotion that wrapped around each note like a warm embrace. Eli turned slowly. You know that song, po? Mang Ramon looked up, leaning his weight on the broomstick. His face was lined from years, maybe decades of hard work, but his eyes were kind enough to melt stone. Anak, every Filipino knows this song. He smiled. But I recognized it because you tried to sing it yesterday. Eli's cheeks burned hot with shame. Tried, he mumbled. I sounded awful. Ramon chuckled softly, stepping closer. His smile wasn't mocking, it was gentle, understanding. You didn't sound awful. You sounded scared. He tapped his chest. When fear sits here, he said, hand over his heart. The voice can't travel right. Eli blinked hard. No teacher had ever explained singing like that. No adult had ever taken that much care with his feelings. You were outside the classroom? Eli asked quietly. Esri, the janitor, nodded. I was mopping the hallway. I heard enough. Eli felt the shame return. Then you heard everyone laugh. I heard children copying a grown-up's mistake, Ramon corrected gently. That's different. Eli looked up surprised. Mistake? The old man's voice softened. It is a terrible mistake to tell a child he cannot be something before he has even grown enough to try. Those words hit Eli harder than anything he'd heard in years. Something inside him loosened just a little, but enough to breathe. Mang Ramon leaned back and studied him for a moment. Your papa used to sing, didn't he? Eli's breath hitched. How did you? I used to see him waiting for you outside this school, Ramon said, eyes drifting far away. He had a guitar on his back, like it was part of him. A lump formed in Eli's throat. He passed away 2 years ago. Ramon nodded, slow and respectful. I am sorry, Anak. He loved you very deeply. A tear slipped down Eli's cheek before he could stop it. He wiped it quickly, embarrassed. I want to be like him, but my teacher said I never will. Ramon's face tightened with controlled hurt. Your teacher heard your fear. She didn't hear your heart. Eli looked down at his shoes. I don't think I have a real voice. Then let us find it, Ramon said. And then the twist came so quietly, so unexpectedly that Eli gasped. Ramon set the broom aside, walked to a supply cabinet, and pulled open the creaking door. From behind stacks of old cardboard boxes, he lifted out a battered guitar case. Come, he said, motioning for Eli to follow. Eli hesitated but stepped closer. Ramon opened the case. Inside was a guitar, old, wooden, cracked near the base, strings rusted but unmistakably familiar. Eli's breath stopped. Mang Ramon, is that? The old man nodded. Yes. Your papa's guitar. Eli's knees almost buckled. But how? Mama thought it was stolen during the flood. Ramon shook his head gently. Your father asked me to keep it safe. He said you were too young then. But he believed that one day you would need it. Eli touched the guitar with trembling fingers. The moment he did, something warm rushed through him, like Papa's hand resting on his shoulder, steady and strong. For me, Eli whispered. For you? Ramon answered simply. Your papa knew your heart would lead you to music. Eli lifted the guitar carefully, like holding a piece of his past that had somehow survived everything. Ramon nodded once more. If you want, I can teach you. I don't know much, but I know enough to help a young voice find its purpose. Eli stared at him, unable to speak. This was what he had prayed for. This was the one person he had begged the night before. It didn't come from a teacher, or a classmate, or even fate. It came from a man most people walked past without noticing. Why, yes, Eli finally whispered. Please, teach me. Ramon smiled, the kind of smile that could rebuild a broken spirit. Then we start today, Anak, he said softly. One note at a time. The lessons began quietly, no announcements, no permission slips, no audience, just two souls who needed each other more than either one realized. Every afternoon when the hallways emptied and the chatter faded into the hot Manila air, Eli slipped into the small, dusty storage room near the gym. Mang Ramon would already be there, sitting on an overturned paint bucket, guitar in hand, waiting with a soft smile. Ready, Anak? He'd ask. Eli always nodded, even on days when doubt sat heavy on his chest. Ramon taught slowly, patiently. He'd place Eli's small fingers on the strings, guiding him gently. No rush. Music is not a race, he'd say. Feel first, sound comes later. Sometimes Eli messed up a chord so badly it made the whole guitar groan. He'd wince, shoulders tightening, expecting disappointment. But Ramon never scolded, never sighed, never looked at him the way Miss Harding had. Instead, he'd chuckle softly. Ah! Even the best singers had days when their voice cracked like old wood. That made Eli smile every time. Soon, their lessons grew beyond guitar. Ramon began teaching him how to breathe, how to stand, how to let emotion rise instead of letting fear choke it. Your voice, Ramon said one afternoon, tapping Eli's chest, comes from here, not from your throat. This is where truth lives. Eli listened like every word was gold. Weeks passed. Eli learned to strum simple chords, then more complex ones. His fingers toughened, small calluses forming tiny badges of honor. And slowly, almost shyly, he began to sing again. At first, his voice was barely louder than a whisper. Ang bayan ko'y tanging ikaw. Ramon closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. Better, he whispered. Again. Each day, Eli grew braver. Not perfect, no, nowhere near, but braver. He started to feel the music instead of fearing it. He started to believe he might not be a mistake after all. One afternoon, halfway through practice, Ramon suddenly stopped playing. Eli frowned. Did I do something wrong? Ramon shook his head. No, anak. Something right. He wiped his eye quickly, pretending dust had gotten into it. Your papa would be proud. Hearing those words, Eli's throat tightened. He looked down, strumming a shaky chord. I miss him, he whispered. I know. Ramon rested a hand on his shoulder. He missed you too. Even before he left this world. Tears spilled down Eli's cheeks, quiet, trembling. Years of holding everything inside. Ramon didn't tell him to be strong. He didn't tell him boys don't cry. He just wrapped an arm around him in a fatherly embrace. And for the first time in years, Eli let himself lean into someone. But something else was happening too. Something neither of them spoke about at first. Ramon was getting weaker. He tried to hide it, brushing off his trembling hands, or the way he coughed into his sleeve. He moved slower, tired quicker. Some days he winced when he lifted the guitar, as if it weighed more than it should have. Eli noticed. One afternoon he said softly, Mang Ramon, are you okay? The old man forced a smile. Just old bones, anak. Nothing new. But Eli saw the truth in the way Ramon sat down. The moment, he thought Eli wasn't looking. In the way he pressed a hand to his chest sometimes. In the way his breath trembled when the weather turned colder. Still, Ramon showed up. Every day. Every single day. And he kept teaching. One late afternoon, rain pattered softly outside, turning the schoolyard into a blur of silver. Ramon placed the guitar down and said, Eli, sing for me. No guitar. Just your voice. Eli's stomach fluttered. Just voice? Yes, Ramon said. Let me hear the heart of it. Eli took a shaky breath, closed his eyes, and then, for the first time without fear, he sung, Bayang Magiliw, Perlas ng Sinanganan. His voice wasn't perfect. It wasn't powerful. But it was real, full of trembling hope, pain, memories, and something new, strength. When he finished, the room fell silent except for the soft drumming of rain. Eli opened his eyes. Ramon was crying. Tears flowed openly down his lined cheeks. No wiping them away this time. No hiding. That, Ramon whispered, voice breaking, is the voice your father believed in. The voice I believe in. Don't ever let anyone silence it again. Eli's chest swelled not with pride, but with something deeper. Something like healing. Something like love. He stood and hugged the old man tightly. Ramon hugged him back, trembling, two broken hearts slowly stitching each other back together. The morning after their viral act performance felt strangely quiet. For the first time in weeks, the brothers didn't wake up to the chatter of street vendors outside their window, or the jolting beep of jeepneys racing down the road. Instead, they woke to soft hotel sheets, warm sunlight falling across their faces, and the faint hum of Los Angeles traffic below. For a moment, both boys just lay there still, stunned, suspended between dream and reality. Then Ryan rolled over, eyes half open, and whispered, Kuya, did yesterday really happen? Marco didn't answer right away. He sat up, brushing sleep from his eyes, and walked to the window. Down below, people were starting their day, some rushing, some strolling lazily. Life moved on, indifferent to the two Filipino kids who had just shaken the world. He pressed his palm against the glass. We didn't just dream it, Marco murmured. We lived it. Ryan hopped out of bed, his hair sticking out in all directions. But, I'm scared, Marco turned. Why? What if that was our best moment? What if we never get something that big again? Ryan swallowed hard. What if people stop caring once the video stops trending? Marco walked toward his little brother and placed a hand on his shoulder. Ryan, dreams don't end when the applause fades. That's when real work begins. Ryan's voice wavered. But what if we fail? Then we stand back up. They held each other's gaze until Ryan finally nodded. A knock on the door broke the silence. When Marco opened it, the hotel hallway gleamed with polished floors and warm yellow lights. A staff member stood outside holding a large envelope. "For the Ramirez brothers," she said with a polite smile. Marco took the envelope, heart pounding. When he opened it, the first thing he saw was the AGT logo, printed in gold. Inside were 2 badges and a letter. Ryan gasped. "Kuya, what is that?" Marco read aloud, his voice trembling. "Congratulations, you're officially through to the live shows." The envelope slipped from his hands. Ryan squealed, running in circles. Marco laughed, breathless, unable to stop smiling. They jumped, hugged, yelled, danced, then fell to the floor laughing until their stomachs hurt. This wasn't just another round. This was the stage millions dreamed of. The stage that could change everything. Their live show journey began immediately. Rehearsals became long, intense, and exhausting, but the boys never complained. They studied every detail. Their timing, their breath control, their choreography, the emotional delivery of each lyric. And every night after practice, the 2 brothers would sit together on their hotel balcony, watching the shimmering lights of Los Angeles, talking about what came next. "We can't just rap," Marco said one night. "We need a message." "What message?" Ryan asked, swinging his legs over the railing. "That anyone can rise." Ryan's brows knitted. "Even kids like us." Marco smiled. "Especially kids like us." Weeks passed. The live show arrived. Backstage, the boys stood trembling as the stage manager counted down. The lights dimmed, the music pulsed through the arena, and thousands of faces waited. Marco took a deep breath. Ryan grabbed his hand. "No matter what happens, I'm proud of us," Ryan whispered. Marco nodded. "Let's tell the world who we are." The spotlight burst to life. The stage rose, and the brothers performed the most powerful piece they had ever written, an anthem of every Filipino street kid who had been told they weren't enough. Their words hit like thunder. Their presence filled every corner of the arena. People rose to their feet before the performance even ended. When the final beat dropped, the crowd erupted, screaming, crying, cheering. In the middle of the roar, Ryan broke down and threw his arms around Marco. The audience saw it. The judges saw it. Millions watching from home saw it. Simon leaned forward, eyes glistening. "Boys, you didn't just perform. You showed the world what belief looks like." The brothers stood there, overwhelmed. Tears streaming not from sadness but from the pure, overwhelming joy of knowing they had done something bigger than themselves. Something unforgettable, something that would follow them for the rest of their lives. As they left the stage, Ryan whispered, "Kuya, we didn't just make it to the live shows." Marco looked at him. "We made it to the world."